Welcome. You are on the right channel. Today's story will shake your beliefs about truth and justice. In a land where secrets ruled and power was protected by lies, an ancient drum that only beat when someone lied resurfaced. But this time, it wasn't just wood and skin. It had evolved, and now it was watching you. Long ago, before electricity lit the streets of Yoloko, and before laws were written with pens instead of pounded into stone, there lived a drum maker named Yuja. He was not just any drum maker, his hands were said to be guided by the gods. His drums didn't just sing, they spoke. His rhythms didn't just entertain. They warned, they wept, they judged. One night, under a sky thick with stars and the scent of palm wine, Yuja had a dream. A voice, neither male nor female, rose from the earth and said, "Yuja, the time of darkness draws near. Men's tongues will twist the truth, and even the wise will be fooled. Go to the forest of Ubij, and there you will find a tree not like the others. Cut from it, shape it with truth, and listen." The next morning, Yuja obeyed. Deep within Ubij forest, where even hunters dared not go without a sacrifice, Yuja found it, the sacred tree. Its bark was dark as night, but when he drew near and whispered, "Who are you?" the tree bled. Thick, golden sap ran down its trunk as if it were crying. Yuja, shaken but obedient, took only what he needed. He carved for 7 days and 7 nights without food. And when he emerged, he held in his arms a drum unlike any ever seen. He named it Ikukuobi, the breath of conscience. The drum was silent at first, almost ordinary. But during the first trial in the king's palace, its power was revealed. A traitor stood accused of stealing from the royal storehouse. He swore on his mother's grave, "I did not take a single grain." But before the king could respond, the drum beat itself. Once. Loud. Deep. Final. The palace guards dropped their spears in fear. The traitor's eyes widened. "It's a trick," he shouted. But the king, Abika the Just, raised his hand. "This is no trick. This is truth." And so it began. Whenever someone lied, the drum would speak. It beat once for every lie, and none could deceive it. Soon, it was brought to all royal hearings. Chiefs, queens, warriors, even the king's own son stood before it. Many were humbled. Some were shamed. A few ran mad from the disgrace. Yuja was named the guardian of the drum, and Ikukuobi was treated with the reverence of a deity. Festivals were held in its honor. Truth became currency. A man's word was worth more than gold. But time, as always, moved forward. Foreigners came with new gods and glittering gadgets. They brought paper and pens, courts and laws, and whispered to the people, "You no longer need your drum. Let reason and evidence decide." Some chiefs resisted. Others were eager to impress the strangers. Slowly, the drum was used less and less. Yuja, old and gray, watched with sorrow as his people turned away. Before he died, he gave the drum to the king with one final warning. "The day you silence truth, lies will eat your kingdom from within." The king, fearing what would happen if the drum judged him too, had it locked in a chest made of Irako wood, buried deep beneath the palace, where only rats and shadows would hear its beat. And the years passed. The kingdom of Yoloko became a town, then a city. Skyscrapers replaced shrines. Generators replaced fireflies. Children no longer knew the story of the drum, they knew social media, politics, and false promises. But the drum waited, silent, listening. It listened to politicians deny their crimes on live TV. It listened to husbands swear false fidelity and pastors collect offerings they did not need. It listened as men and women lied, not only to others, but to themselves. And though no one heard it, in the palace basement beneath layers of dust and forgotten history, the drum beat. Once, then again, its rhythm had returned. And someone with blood of the old kings in her veins, was about to awaken it. In the heart of present-day Yoloko, the palace still stood. Though now dwarfed by phone masts and shopping plazas, its red earth walls whispered stories too ancient for the new world to understand. Tourists came to take photos, unaware of what slept beneath their feet. Adora, the only daughter of King Namdi, was not a typical princess. She wore jeans more than rappers, preferred documentaries to dances, and worked as a freelance journalist covering African heritage. Her spirit burned with a quiet defiance, the kind that questioned tradition not to destroy it, but to understand it. She had returned from the city to spend time with her aging father and to gather material for her next feature, Forgotten Instruments of Justice in African History. While rummaging through the royal archive, a dusty room behind the main hall, she stumbled upon a locked door she had never noticed. The key, oddly enough, was still hanging on a faded red nail beside it as if waiting. Curious and alone, she opened it. The air hit her like a whisper from the past, musty, thick, electric. Inside, an old chest sat in the corner, bound in rusty chains. A forgotten plaque above it read in faded ink, "Ikukobi, let truth rest but not die." She almost laughed. It sounded poetic, dramatic even, but something pulled her closer. She cut through the chains with a crowbar and lifted the lid. There it was, a black, worn drum. Its surface was cracked like parched land, yet it felt warm, alive. Adora reached out and touched it. The drum let out a faint, low hum. Not a beat, not a sound made by force, but a vibration, a pulse, like a heartbeat long buried. Startled, she pulled back. "This isn't normal," she whispered, goosebumps rising. That night, she did research. Late into the evening, through dusty books and oral archives recorded by elders, she pieced the story together. Yuja, the sacred tree, the royal trials. The truth-detecting drum wasn't legend. It was real, and it was in her hands. But how could it still function? Was it magic? A forgotten science? Something in between? Adora contacted Dr. Jide Amadi, a university historian known for blending ancient artifacts with modern analysis. When he arrived and examined the drum, he was speechless. "This is not just a relic," he said. "There's something reactive in its construction. It responds to emotion, possibly frequency, maybe even intent." With her tech-savvy cousin's help, they built a protective shell around the drum, installed vibration sensors, and connected it to a tablet that read changes in sound waves and temperature. They called it TRU Vibe. The plan was simple: run experimental interviews, test its ability to detect lies. Adora interviewed volunteers, asking them to lie and tell the truth at random. Each time a lie was spoken, the sensors spiked, and the drum responded with a hum low and unmistakable. It was no longer just a tool of tradition. It had adapted. It was now a bridge between the past and the present. Adora knew this could change everything, but her father, King Namdi, was wary. When she showed him TRU Vibe and explained its origin, he grew silent. After a long pause, he said, "That drum once shook this kingdom. It exposed chiefs, ended marriages, and nearly cost your grandfather his throne. Are you sure you want to open that wound?" Adora looked him in the eyes. "People are being lied to every day, Baba. They are tired. Maybe it's time for truth to speak again." He nodded slowly. "Then let the court hear it." 2 days later, the royal council gathered. The issue: funds missing from a community development project, and whispers of land being sold to foreign hands. Adora sat quietly, TRU Vibe before her, sensors hidden. The ministers, thinking it was some new tech demo, chuckled. The first speaker, Chief Odin, swore he knew nothing. "My hands are clean." The drum hummed, low, clear, unmistakable. The laughter stopped. A second minister claimed innocence. The drum pulsed again. One by one, the council members spoke. Some passed in silence. Others caused the drum to throb with warning. The room grew cold. No one dared to lie again. Adora's father stood slowly. Perhaps the ancestors are not done with us after all. And from the shadows of forgotten history, the breath of conscience had spoken once more. The news of the drum's return spread through Yoloko like wildfire. First, it was whispers, palace guards murmuring in the markets, elders nodding in approval during evening palm wine gatherings. Then came the online chatter. A blurry photo of the drum beside Princess Adora's laptop made its way to the internet with the caption, "Old ways, new truths. Yoloko's royal family uses ancient lie detector." Within days, journalists, skeptics, and curious onlookers flooded the kingdom. Some came to witness, others came to mock, but all came because something had stirred a hunger for truth in a world drowning in deception. King Namdi, once hesitant, saw the opportunity. "Let the people see for themselves," he said. "If justice sleeps, the kingdom rots." He ordered a public hearing in the palace square, the first of its kind in decades. The case, a long-standing land dispute between local farmers and a group of wealthy developers claiming they had the king's approval to seize ancestral farmlands for a luxury estate. The square was packed. From barefoot children to high-ranking officials, everyone gathered under the blistering sun. At the center sat the drum Ikukuobi, now wrapped in glass and wired to Adora's upgraded Thierry vibe system, which silently translated the drum's hums into sound waves and visual alerts on a screen. Adora stood beside it, composed but watchful. She had become more than a journalist. She was now a bridge between past and present, chosen not by bloodline alone, but by truth itself. The first to speak was Mr. Uche, the developer. Clad in a crisp suit, his voice rang with confidence. "We signed all documents legally. The farmers were compensated fairly. This is progress, not theft." The drum pulsed, not loud, but sharp like a warning cough before a storm. The crowd stiffened. Adora glanced at the screen. The vibration had spiked. Mr. Uche adjusted his tie nervously. Perhaps there were misunderstandings, but no lies. Another pulse. Louder. This time the crowd responded. Boos. Shouts. One elder woman shouted, "My husband died protecting that land. Don't stand here and twist the truth." Next came Chief Dogo, a council elder long suspected of taking bribes. He approached with calm arrogance. "I mediated the land transfer myself. No one was forced. No secrets." Boom. The drum beat for the first time in full. Not a hum, not a pulse, a deep, ancestral beat, echoing off palace walls. Even the birds scattered from the trees. People gasped. Chief Dogo froze. Sweat poured down his face. King Namdi stood. His voice thundered, "Speak the truth now, or let the drum finish what it has started." Chief Dogo's lips trembled. I was only doing what others told me I was promised land I didn't mean." Boom. The second beat dropped like a gavel from the gods. The truth was no longer hidden. That evening, 3 officials were suspended. An investigation was reopened. And most importantly, the farmers were promised a new hearing this time, with the eyes of the world watching and the drum listening. The people cheered. Adora didn't speak much after the trial. Her mind was spinning. The drum didn't just work, it demanded truth like a living thing. It didn't care for titles, status, or explanations. It heard the lie behind the mouth, and it was growing stronger. At night, as she sat alone in her room, the drum in storage beside her workstation, she noticed something strange. The drum would hum faintly even when no one was speaking. It happened when she received certain emails, when her laptop played certain videos, politicians denying scandals, pastors making false claims of healing. Hum, hum, hum. It was as if the drum didn't need a courtroom anymore. Lies were everywhere, and it was listening. That's when Adora had an idea, one that would either make her a global icon or a hunted woman. She would take the drum online, a digital truth show, a live stream, a platform where anyone from governors to celebrities could be tested. Voluntarily, of course at first. She called it The Breath Speaks. The first episode was already planned, but as she prepared the set and adjusted the camera, she didn't notice the shadow standing outside her door, a tall figure in a royal robe, watching through the window. Not her father, not a friend, someone who had once hidden the drum and did not want it awakened again. The next morning, Adora woke up to find her window slightly ajar. She was sure she had locked it. A cold breeze swept through the room, stirring the curtain like the breath of a ghost. She turned to where the drum had been kept the night before and froze. It was gone. Her laptop still sat on the desk, the lights on the TRU Vibe sensor blinking idly, waiting for a signal. But the drum Ikukuobi, the ancient conscience of Yoloko, was no longer in its glass shell. Panic clutched her chest. She ran to the door and flung it open. "Guards," she shouted, "seal the palace gates. The sacred drum has been stolen." Within minutes, the palace was in chaos. The king himself rushed out of the council chamber, robe flapping behind him. "Who dares touch the drum?" he roared. "Speak now, or may the gods open your lips with fire." But no one confessed. Not the guards, not the staff, not the elders who had long warned the king that Adora was meddling with powers best left buried. A silent tension filled the palace, heavier than any storm. In the hours that followed, Adora searched everywhere: the basement, the archive room, even the forest behind the palace walls. But she found no trace, no fingerprints, no broken locks. It was as though the drum had vanished into the air. But she knew better. That night, her phone buzzed with an unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. A voice, old and gravelly, spoke calmly. "Silence is sometimes the last protection of a crumbling kingdom." Adora's heart dropped. "Who is this? Return to the city. Stop your show, or you will awaken more than just the truth." The line went dead. She stood still, her hand shaking. She had expected resistance, but not this. Not a thief with access to her room. Not a warning so deliberate, so ancient. Adora had two choices: step back or push forward. She chose the latter. 3 days later, the pilot episode of The Breath Speaks streamed online. With no physical drum, she relied on archived readings, old trial footage, and digital recreations of the TRU Vibe data. The show was a blend of storytelling and exposure. She told the world about Yoloko, about Yuja the drum maker, about how truth was once alive and how lies had silenced it. The views exploded. People commented, "Where can we get this drum? Can she test our politicians next? My husband needs to face this drum." By the end of the week, the video had reached 500,000 views. Truth, it seemed, was trending again. But not everyone was pleased. Late one evening, while editing episode 2, Adora received a message, a single photo grainy taken in a dark room. It showed the drum. It sat on a wooden table, half covered with a black cloth. Standing behind it was a face she hadn't seen in years. Prince Nduka, her late uncle's only son. Thought to be exiled, banished for fraud during his youth. But there he was, alive and with the drum. And his message followed. "You want truth? Come for it. But come alone." Adora didn't wait. She packed her camera, an audio recorder, and a single backup sensor from the TRU Vibe kit. No weapons, just her faith in truth. She followed the coordinates sent with the photo deep into the outskirts of Yoloko, where the forest met the hills and forgotten shrines whispered to the stars. At midnight, she arrived. An old colonial building, half swallowed by vines, stood in silence. A lone lantern flickered near the doorway. Inside, voices murmured. She stepped in. There sat Prince Nduka, older now, beard streaked with gray. Around him were 5 others cloaked in shadows. Elders, former chiefs, businessmen she recognized from the council photos. They weren't just hiding the drum. They were the ones who buried it decades ago. Why? Adora asked, voice steady. Because truth is dangerous, Nduka replied. Truth has no friends, only victims. We hid the drum to preserve peace. And now you threaten everything. Adora walked toward the drum and placed her hand on it. It hummed. Low. Deep. Stronger than ever. You can silence me, she said, but you can't silence the truth anymore. The people are listening now. And the drum it never forgot. The room fell quiet. But from outside, a faint beat echoed in the trees. Boom. 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 The breath of conscience had returned, and this time, it was louder than fear. The drum's beat continued outside the building, slow, deliberate, like footsteps of a rising storm. Boom, boom, boom. Inside, no one moved. Adora's fingers trembled as they rested on the ancient wood of Ikukuobi. The drum was warm, alive. Its surface pulsed beneath her palm, responding to her presence like a heartbeat long separated from its vessel. Prince Nduka took a step forward, his expression tight with warning. You don't know what you're playing with, Adora. The breath of conscience isn't just a truth seeker, it's a mirror. One that exposes even its bearer. Adora didn't flinch. Then let it expose me. The elders murmured. One of them, an old woman with braided silver hair, shook her head. We sealed it for a reason, girl. The last time the drum beat freely, 3 royal houses fell. Brothers turned against brothers. Blood watered the throne. Maybe they deserve to fall, Adora said calmly. Maybe what Yuloko needs is not more silence, but a cleansing. Suddenly, the room darkened. The lantern flickered, and the drum began to hum not loud, but with rising urgency, as if feeding on the hidden lies floating in the room like smoke. Adora reached into her bag and connected the TRU Vibe mini sensor to the drum. Instantly, her wristwatch screen lit up. Glowing red lines spiked across the interface. Lie detected. Then another. Deception detected. Source unknown. The sensor was picking up on something. Not words, but unspoken truths. Ancient betrayal still lingering in the bones of those present. Adora raised her voice. Who here signed the papers that let foreign companies take over our sacred forest in 1998? No one answered. Boom. The drum struck. Adora's eyes darted to the elders. Who ordered the fire in Okinii village the year after, claiming it was an electrical fault? More silence. Boom. The drum beat again, deeper, louder. The vines outside the building shook. Birds scattered into the night. Then, to everyone's shock, the TRU Vibe screen showed something new. Hidden recording found. Adora blinked. A file, buried in the drum's energy system, likely captured years ago when it had last been active. She played it. A voice crackled through her speaker. Once the drum is hidden, they'll believe anything. Just make sure the farmers don't talk. Burn what's needed. We must protect the royal name. It was her late uncle, King Izuto, her father's older brother. Adora's heart sank. So it wasn't just the elders. Her own blood had been part of the deception. The silence in the room was now heavier than before. Even Nduka looked shaken. We buried that recording, we thought. You thought wrong, Adora said, voice steel. The drum heard. The drum remembers. Suddenly, footsteps echoed outside the door. Palace guards. Adora's father, King Namdi, burst through the entrance, sword in hand, flanked by royal protectors. Enough, he bellowed. What is this secret gathering? Why was my daughter lured here in the night? His eyes locked on the drum, and for the first time in decades, he seemed afraid. Father, Adora said softly, did you know? King Namdi looked away. I didn't want to, but silence makes cowards of kings. The drum beat once more. Not for Nduka, not for the elders, but for the king. His face crumbled. I was there. I signed the order to hide the drum. I was young, afraid the truth would break our lineage. So I helped them lock it away. Adora's voice cracked. And how many innocent people were punished because the truth was hidden? The king fell to his knees. Too many. The guards stood in stunned silence, unsure whether to raise their weapons or their hands. And then, slowly, one by one, the elders in the room knelt. Not before Adora, but before the drum. It was no longer just a relic. It was justice reborn. That night, Adora uploaded the full confrontation video. No edits. No filters. It broke the internet. Hashtags trended. Hashtag the drum speaks. Hashtag truth in Yoloko. Hashtag let the breath be heard. Across the world, people began to demand their own truth sessions. Talk shows, debates, and parliaments wanted copies of the TRU vibe. Adora was flooded with interviews, praise, and threats. But while she stood in the palace balcony days later, looking over a city rising with truth and protest, she felt only one thing. The drum had chosen her. But what would it ask of her next? The sun rose over Yoloko like a wounded crown, bright, but tired, casting long shadows over a kingdom now wide awake. Adora stood before the royal court, the sacred drum Ikukuobi at her side. The throne room, once a place of rehearsed praises and polite nods, now throbbed with unease. The past week had turned Yoloko upside down. Since the broadcast of the confessions, elders had resigned, officials had fled, and the people long silenced had found their voices. Women from the displaced Okinii village marched in the streets. Youth groups chanted for justice. The sacred was speaking again, and no one could silence it. But with truth came unrest. Adora had received over 100 threats. Her studio was vandalized. Her TRU Vibe sensors were confiscated temporarily under the excuse of public safety. Yet through it all, the drum remained silent until now. Today, the people had gathered. They wanted answers, not from ghosts of the past, but from the king. Adora's father sat on the throne, stripped of his gold sash and ivory beads. The Council of Yoloko had demanded he face the drum in public, and he had agreed. Adora turned to him. "Father," she said, voice steady, "for years you ruled under silence. You allowed injustice to sleep under royal carpets. Today, the breath of conscience will ask nothing but truth. Speak freely and let the drum judge." The room held its breath. King Nambi looked at the people, the same people he had served, protected, and failed. He cleared his throat. "I was taught that a king's greatest power is control, but I have learned too late that it is truth." He looked at Adora, his only child. "Yes, I helped bury the drum. I feared the chaos it might cause. I feared the shame. I feared my own father's sins rising to swallow us. But I now see. Truth is not chaos. Truth is cleansing." The drum remained still. Then, a man stood from the crowd. A former prison warden. He pointed a trembling finger. "And the 5 men who were executed for the Okinii fire, will their names be cleared?" King Nambi nodded. "They were innocent. I have signed the orders. Their families will be compensated and their honor restored." Still, the drum stayed silent. Adora stepped forward. "People of Yoloko, you have seen the power of our ancestors. The sacred drum has not come to punish, but to purify. It beats when we lie, but when we choose truth, even truth that burns, it lets us breathe." Tears glistened in the eyes of old mothers. Children watched with awe. The palace hadn't felt this alive in decades. Then, from the crowd, a woman stepped forward. She held a scroll, yellowed, fragile. "I am Mama Ophir. Daughter of the last royal drum maker, Yuja, she said, I have kept this for years. Adora unrolled the scroll. It was a prophecy. When the breath returns by blood unbroken, and daughter lifts what fathers buried, then shall Yoloko rise by truth unspoken, and the land shall no longer be wearied. The court fell silent again. Adora looked up, stunned. Blood unbroken? Mama Ophir nodded. You are descended from Yuja, through your mother's line. The drum returned to its own. A shiver ran through Adora. The connection, the hum, the way it had obeyed her, it all made sense now. She was not just a truth seeker. She was the drum's heir. And now Yoloko needed her. Weeks passed. King Namdi abdicated quietly, handing the staff of rule to a new council guided by transparency, tradition, and technology. A rotating leadership, voted by the people, with the drum present at every major decision. Adora didn't seek the throne. She founded the House of Breath, a sanctuary where victims could speak, truth could be tested, and justice could begin. Schools began teaching the story of Yuja again. The youth started building updated truth-sensing drums using Teary Vibe tech mixed with ancient symbols. The past and present had finally reconciled. But Adora knew one thing. Truth is not a destination. It is a journey. And so she traveled village to village, nation to nation with the sacred drum and her digital sensors. Every time a lie tried to hide behind power, the drum would speak, and its voice would shake the world. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share.